I think we're going to get started. Yep, there we go. We were going to think about dancing, but we're going to get right to the panel here. Thank you all for being here for the Ski and Outdoor Industry panel discussion. And it's a pleasure to be here with you. And what we're going to talk about is how can we as outdoor enthusiasts leverage our story to create effective change. And first of all, I want to just quickly introduce our panel. We're really excited to have Simi Hamilton, who's a 3-time Olympian in cross-country skiing and U.S. ski team member. Okay. And we have Angel Collinson, professional big mountain skier. Laura Schaffer, Sustainability Director for POWDR. And Ben Popp, Executive Director, American Birkebeiner Ski Foundation. So in a moment, I'm going to be asking you to do what I asked for the panelists with the person next to you. And that is that I'm going to ask you to share a specific experience you've had in nature that helps portray your passion and appreciation for the outdoors. And that's a moment that you can savor in your experiences in life. This is a really great way to build from, to advocate for what we're working on here. And so in a moment, we're going to move to that. But first of all, I just wanted to talk about some of the successes that we're seeing. And in all essence, these are all stories in themselves. And that is to have Jessie Diggins, who won the gold in the film we saw, that she endorses Fee and Dividend. We've also seen such as the Climate Solutions Caucus holding a briefing last September where they talked about the economic toll climate change is having on winter sports. We also had great success with Saving Snow, which was a film by Diogo Freire, who did an amazing job. And we had, I think the last count was over 150 screenings, and 7,000 people have seen this film. And we use that as a great platform to talk about solutions and talk about the issue and to communicate that story as well. We were happy to have CCL partner with Protect Our Winners and had a briefing April 25th with 5 Olympians in that briefing. And that led to Paulson joining the Climate Solutions Caucus. We also see the National Ski Area Association stepping up and endorsing carbon fee and dividend. They also are reaching out to ski, they call them climate challengers, which is part of a National Ski Area Association program that is working to help ski areas advocate for climate solutions. We also, in April this year, we had House Resolution 825 introduced, and that's a bipartisan resolution. It's recognizing the impacts of climate change on outdoor recreation and supporting policies that address the causes and effects of climate change. In Utah, we passed a resolution, a climate resolution, and in that we were really happy to see how the ski areas and the Ski Association, Ski Utah, stepped up and signed a letter of support. And it was great to see how the ski industry has stepped up in all these ways and many more, using their story from their place to create change. I got involved in the ski industry as a 5-year-old growing up in Vermont, and it's been a passion for me. It's where I go into the outdoors and I connect, and I think that's why all of you are here, because of that connection that we all have with the natural world, and to try to use our voice to create that change. So before we run into the panel discussion here, I would like to ask all of you to turn to your partner, and like I said, ask you to share a specific experience you've had in nature that helps portray your passion and appreciation for the outdoors. So think about a moment you can savor. And we'll just do 2 minutes per person, and then we'll head on to the discussion.
Yeah, no, right. Yeah. I get to talk. looks like we got it covered.
Yeah, I know. We're good.
Making it easy on you guys. I don't even have to
Thanks.
say anything.
Just sit up here and look good.
Yeah.
I'm going to like signing autographs before the thing even starts. Thank you.
That's pretty great. Where's your microphone?
I'm telling you, they usually put me in the corner on the end. That works best.
Oh, that's Larry.
Where's your
Here, we gotta put this here.
There you go.
We can share.
Oh, you'll find out.
Yeah.
So you're gonna stick it in?
Pictures are up.
I've done it with Protect Our Winners.
I guess I'll probably hear
So,
where your picture
It's
is
like a
from.
little bit of a different
So
setup.
that's pretty funny, actually.
Just
That's my
because we're
mom.
more of a focus.
We had done,
I
it
guess
was a
it's
ski
focus
race.
here,
It was like 5 or 6.
Just like
But it's
slightly
actually a snowmobile trophy.
different feeling.
And they had handed him out.
That's all they
had. That's right.
Yeah.
What it was. It was kind of a,
I perspire a little when
Where
I'm
was that? Where did you grow up in the
I grew
West?
up in northern Wisconsin.
You did, okay.
And actually not far from where Hayward is, where
Okay,
Birkebeiner
yeah.
is. And little that I ever
I
think
like being in the
that I
open
ever
field.
go back there.
Exciting.
But it is, right? I mean, I think it's sort of one of those
Trying
things,
to,
like you
yeah,
said,
trying to get
you grew up
downtown
in the
earlier today,
lifestyle,
but
Yeah.
and totally love it,
too much to
and
do.
kind of became a passion, and
pretty wild place.
now
I like to
very
get out on
lucky
the
to get to do it every day,
you know,
obviously,
where all
but
the monuments are.
Yeah.
everybody can.
I'm better on the
Nothing
outside.
special about it.
Right, yeah. Right?
Yeah,
How about you?
Yeah.
yeah.
I grew up
I
in the
came when I
Midwest
was little,
in
but
Des
this is
Moines.
the
That's our
first
kitchen
time
in
that
Des
I've
Moines.
spent more than
And,
with powder.
yeah,
More
yeah.
like
So I grew
or
up
2
just
days
like
that we're always like
my parents'
inside
only
lobby.
vacation
This
we
is
would
the first
ever
time
go
where I've
on
kind of
was
been
ski
around the
vacation.
city.
My
No
dad
kidding.
was a teacher. My
So
mom was a
beautiful. There's lots
journalist.
of
We
Yeah.
didn't have a lot of
green
money, and it
spaces
was just like
I didn't quite realize like
and
what
then
a
they
nice
would go
city it is.
load up the car as
Yep.
every other Iowan would, drive to the Front Range of Colorado.
I will confess I'd rather
ski
be out
Keystone
in the
for a week.
Where in Iowa?
Bell to Bell. Des Moines.
City, I love
Yeah,
that history.
Des Moines, and my dad's whole family was Minnesota. They were all
Got it.
Minneapolis people. So
Yep.
we, every other Christmas, we go up to Lutzen.
Okay, folks, I'm going to ask you to switch partners now.
Like, look at this gondola and like Giants Ridge.
Please switch.
Yes.
So do you guys mostly compete in Europe mostly, or do you have some teams?
I didn't hear. So,
I used to compete
yeah, so it was really, it was just like
on
this huge part of just who I was.
Right.
Maybe you're done switching. It sounds kind of quiet. Okay, there we go. Whole life in 2 minutes. Gotcha. So now what we'd like to do is I'm going to ask all of our panelists to, again, go through and share their experience in nature that shares their passion. And then I'm going to be, I've asked all the panelists to think about, how they can describe how they're being impacted by climate change and efforts that they're making in regards to advocacy. So I'm going to go in the order of the photos here. So next one will be Laura.
That's great. All right. Good afternoon. I'm Laura. That's me on the bike right there in our beautifully decorated 80s kitchen in Des Moines, Iowa. And that's my very first very own bike that I ever owned. And I grew up riding around on that on the sidewalks of Des Moines, Iowa. I have the scars on my knees and arms to prove it, if anyone questions. But that led to a lifetime of camping and hiking and skiing and biking. Every vacation my family took was outdoors. It was all we did. It was the only way that we knew how to play. And so when I got to high school and got to participate as in a youth UN summit, and we were asked to choose a resolution to get behind, I gravitated immediately to climate because I felt like everyone in the room was talking about it, but no one was really doing anything about it. And it seemed like there was a big opportunity there, but for me, it wasn't climate at that time, it was air and water pollution. And that was because air and water pollution were something that I, as a high school kid in Iowa, felt like was tangible, and I could see it. And I wrote this declaration on, there are cities with smog now, and if the smog continues, then we likely won't be able to have a planet where people can live healthfully. It's somewhat, it's the beginning days of trying to figure all this out. But for me, there was a theme there, and that was really finding the tangible piece of climate and how I could relate to it. And since I had spent so much time outdoors, I really felt like my connection to pollution was one that I could sort of champion and take. And so that was a theme that then carried on into my career, where I lucked out and landed a job working in the ski industry at Snowbird in Utah, where at the time when I worked there, Angel was skiing there, and she could ski me under the table, and she was probably this tall. It's just this incredible community there. And while I was there, I decided that I wanted to run a ski area that had a different business model than ski areas were using at the time, and not dramatically different, but just one that took the community and the environment into account. And it seemed very obvious to me, but in the ski industry at that time, you couldn't really mention, this was early 2000s, I should clarify. Early 2000s, you really couldn't talk about global warming or climate change, at least if you were on the business side of the ski industry, because there was this totally illogical argument that people would make that if we talked about it, then people wouldn't come and ski. And I just couldn't put that together in my head, because what I saw was this huge opportunity, because I felt like if people really loved skiing so much, surely they would do something and engage if they knew that this thing that they loved was threatened. And so I really saw this as the ultimate canary in the coal mine, right? Skiing is fun and sexy. It's not gloom and doom. It's not the heavy stuff that we're all dealing with on a day-to-day basis. It's something fun. It's something we all enjoy. I would guess, how many people in this room cross-country ski, downhill ski? I would guess that the majority of people in this room, right? It's something that it feeds your soul. And so I now am at POWDR, and POWDR is a company that owns a number of ski resorts across the country, from Mount Bachelor in Oregon to Killington in Vermont, and a number of others all in between. We also own Woodward Action Sports Camps. They're summer camps, and then we also own Outside Television and an events management company that does things like put on fun runs. And I tell you all of this because POWDR is an adventure lifestyle company. It's not a ski company. And I would guess that you guys probably have some guesses as to why our portfolio looks like that. And we can circle back to that. I'll give you a little background so you understand. So our founder, John Cumming, was made in the mountains. Going back to your stories that you were sharing with each other, our stories, he was made in the mountains, and he was a guide on Rainier. He grew up at Snowbird too, and he felt like he was running this business that does have a significant impact. He saw climate change as a real thing, and he wanted to figure out how the ski industry could try to spur action. And so back in the early 2000s, again, at this time, he actually stuck his head out, stuck his chin out, neck out, whatever that phrase is. But he at the time commissioned research from the National Center for Atmospheric Research to show the effects of climate change on the ski industry. And the results of this Canary study were nothing short of terrifying. And they essentially said that one of POWDR resorts at the time, by 2050, would have 50% of the snowpack that the resort had as of 2000, and 50% of the season, which is just not a business, right? I mean, you can't do that. And so POWDR issued this research, put it out there through Save Our Snows, shared it with 1,000 people in Park City, and then shared beyond. And it really became a catalyst in the ski industry for ski resorts to start to understand that action needed to be taken, and it wasn't something that we could sit back. So for POWDR, what that meant, from 2006 to 2016, we invested millions of dollars, $10 million or so, in energy reduction measures, really focusing on efficiency piece. We also invested millions of dollars in renewables, and really started to understand what our basic footprint was there, and starting to get our house in order, because we understood that for us to really affect at scale, it's got to be outside of what our actions are, right? But we also really felt strongly that we needed to have our house in order to then be able to go out and advocate and work with people like everyone in this room, and come here to DC and work with our other industry colleagues and really try to push for change. And so we have begun to do some advocacy work. We signed on to We Are Still In. We fully support carbon pricing principles. We are part of the climate challenge that Bill mentioned earlier. And all of these things just fundamentally are a part of who POWDR is, and it's no question really that it would be a part of who we are. At the same time, we also understand that that's not necessarily enough. So Protect Our Winters, or POW, as many of you guys know, came out with an economic report that I'm sure there are probably others up here who will speak to. But one of the numbers out of that report was that in a low snow year, the economy can take $1 billion hit due to low snow year. And that's specifically the ski, our economy from the ski losses due to a low snow year. And if we own a number of resorts in the ski industry, that's obviously a huge part of who we are. So we see big opportunity to drive change by connecting with our consumers. So also in that POW report, there are 20 million skiers a year, and many of them are skiing multiple times a year. At our resorts, we have 4 million skier visits a year, and so we see a huge opportunity to connect with our consumers as a way to drive change. So yes, we're going to have our house in order, and yes, we're going to be here and working with other resorts, coming to DC, advocating for the policies that we need to be advocating for. But we really see our lever as being those people, going back to what we talked about earlier, those people who really love skiing. So everyone here, in whatever form of skiing or playing in the snow, quite frankly, that it is. And so for POWDR, we've developed a program called Play Forever, which captures both the seriousness of it with the forever piece, but also the joy of our sports with the play piece. And Play Forever is our commitment to the environment, and it's our commitment to connecting with our consumers and helping not only have our call to actions for ourselves, but also what we like to call call to advocacies with our consumers. And so that's the platform that we're working through at POWDR. And I say all of this with the, I want to circle back to us being an adventure lifestyle company. Back in the early 2000s, John, our founder, saw two threats to the ski industry. One of them was the aging demographic of skiers, and the other was the threat of climate change. And so at that point, he decided to diversify the business so our business wasn't so fully reliant on our winter revenues. And that's something that we're going to continue to do, and it's a part of the business. At the same time, the skiing is the core of our business, and that's the heart and soul of our business, and we're not going to run away from that. So we're going to try to figure out whatever possible opportunity that aligns with where we're willing to put a stake on the ground, which fortunately is climate, and be able to take action there. So, I think we'll get into more details through the questions, and I've certainly spoken too much, but I'll just sort of round with, ultimately, long-term ski area success contributes to the economic and environmental resiliency in local communities. And that success isn't going to happen unless we address what's going on with the climate. And there's a huge opportunity with our 4 million people, with the 20 million people who love doing all these sports that we love. And so what we're really trying to do is to trigger the thought process, just trigger the thought process and capture the passion that we all have in this room. And we're trying to do that in every possible outlet that we can. And so it's a huge opportunity to be here, and we learn every day. So, it's a huge opportunity to be learning, and also to be in a position where we are in a sport that people love so much, and to be able to drive the change through that sport. So I'm grateful for my little bike days and scars that I got, because they put me in a place where I feel very, very fortunate, and we can all celebrate what we do and make an opportunity out of this challenge.
Okay, it looks like you're up, Angel.
Oh, jeez. Well, it might be kind of hard to see on that photo, but there's a small little speck amidst a poof of snow, and that's me, and that's what I spend most of my winters doing. It's getting increasingly hard to do with climate change, which is why I'm here. But I grew up at Snowbird Ski Resort in Utah. I grew up in the little employee housing up there in a 5x12 closet that I shared with my brother John. And my dad still jokes that we're coming out of the closet. And yes, I inherited my dad joke capacity from my dad. He's great at them. But over the course of my 20 years that I spent up at Snowbird, I saw winters change before my eyes, right? And all of us know that feeling that you get when you're outside in the middle of a snowstorm and it's cold and the air is crisp and you can smell the pine trees and it's quiet and you can hear the birds. And there's a sense of serenity and a sense of feeling really small. And I love that feeling. That's the feeling that I'm always after. And as I've watched winters change, they become shorter, they become warmer, the snowpack is much less dependable and consistent, and I'm seeing this across the globe. We were just talking about how, we usually go to Europe early season to train, and that's like Europe's experiencing changes, Alaska's experiencing changes. I've gone there to Alaska 7 springs in a row to do trips like this, and just in the course of 7 years, we're watching glaciers recede. It's happening mind-blowingly fast. So I'm seeing it at home, I'm seeing it abroad. I grew up, living at Snowbird, and then in the summers we would rent our house out, or our little apartment out, and we would travel out of a van in the summers, and it was before van life was cool. It was actually quite uncool then, and we didn't have any friends, but I had my brother, my parents, and rocks and sticks and mountains and lasting snowpacks, and it was awesome. But it created this love for the environment. So when I quit ski racing when I was 18, I took up an academic full-ride scholarship at the University of Utah, and I started studying environmental studies and philosophy and international relations, and I wanted to go into environmental policy until I entered in some big mountain skiing comps, and I had sponsors like the North Face knocking on my door and being like, hey, we really want you to join our global athlete team. And I was like, no, I'm sorry, I can't do that. I'm a full-time student. And then I had this moment where I was like, whoa, I can't turn down these once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. But I went from learning all of these things that are affecting our environment into owning a truck and then buying a snowmobile and then flying around in helicopters and doing all of the things that I had just learned were so bad. And I was like, ugh. But it made me really think deeply about the ski industry and what are we doing, why are we here, what is our unique lever and power, and how do we leverage that? Because fast forward from when I dropped out of college, 2 years, and I was meeting with Gina McCarthy, the head of the EPA, with a group with Protect Our Winners, and a bunch of Olympians were in the room, and it was a really surreal moment where all of a sudden, I realized it might have taken me a lifetime, who knows how many years of going to school and lobbying to have that experience of working with the EPA doing a Twitter storm, or these different conversations that we're having with our senators because of this platform that I've gotten. So I still feel conflicted to this day about the means to how I've gotten to where I am to have a voice to speak up about the changes that I'm seeing in climate change. And that's what I hope to speak to nowadays. I really aim to connect with people's hearts because, as we all know, like as skiers in the ski community, we're full of passion and love and life. And when we do that exercise about telling our stories, it's easy for us to vibrantly come up with something and share that with somebody. And I hope to do that. I hope to spread these stories through social media, through the films that I'm doing with my skiing. And I also hope to humanize this climate change in that I really liked what Ted said earlier about let not the perfection get in the way of the good, because I've come under a lot of heat for my lifestyle, and I am conflicted about that. I'm not a perfect person. I'm not, I went from having a pretty carbon intensive lifestyle than I have now. It's quite high in carbon consumption. And I think it's important that we always work to being better. Like, I'm looking to do more. I'm looking to lobby in DC. I'm looking at the ways that I can eat less meat. I'm looking at ways that I can actively do more. I'm not going to fly around in helicopters forever. I actually enjoy walking uphill more than I enjoy flying around in helicopters, which might seem crazy, but it's true. But my point is that we're not all perfect. And I think it's time to move beyond like throwing stones or of feeling like somebody's not doing enough, because I think we all feel like we're not doing enough. That's why climate change is so scary and such a big thing. And I would like to tell stories that resonate with us all and inspire kids to speak up, inspire all of us to speak up, to talk about climate change and not be afraid of the fact that we're imperfect, we don't have all the answers, we all consume fossil fuels. I wish we didn't, and that's why I'm speaking here. Like, I want to find another way. So I'm doing the best I can with the voice I have. I'm really, really honored to be on this panel. I'm so stoked you guys are all out here. It's been really refreshing just hearing about all of the ways that we can do good in the world. So thank you all for being here.
That's a good one there. So that is that would be the mid 70s there, likely. And I grew up in northern Wisconsin, not far from where the American Birkebeiner. How many of you are cross country skiers versus alpine skiers? So some of you probably have heard of the American Birkebeiner, but it's North America's largest ski race, and it's actually the third largest in the world. And I grew up next to it in little sleepy northern Wisconsin. Phillips was the name of the community. And I was fortunate enough, my parents, that's what they liked to do. On weekends, they went out and skied and biked and hiked. They weren't really competitive. They didn't race much, but it's just what we did. And this is one of my earliest memories, and I don't know only, but one of the reasons is because if you actually look closely, it was a Bill Koch youth ski race, and it was in Hayward, actually, where the American Birkebeiner was. It was called the Barron at the time. And but the funny thing is, that trophy I still have it. And you know why? It's a snowmobile. And I don't know if they didn't have any other trophies or what, but you got a snowmobile trophy. So it was, but it was one of those things that some of my earliest memories and my favorite memories growing up is then as I went to college at St. Olaf College in the Twin Cities and had the opportunity to continue skiing and thought that I would never get back to the ski world. Yeah, it's fun. I like to do it. But then, lo and behold, I graduated from college. I needed a job. So, the next door neighbor college needed a college coach. I could coach skiing. That doesn't sound so bad. And lo and behold, 25 years later, I find myself still in the industry and actually more passionate than ever about it, really because of the early years that I was fortunate of growing up, that when I was young, I was exposed to this lifestyle of, wow, what it was to be active outdoors. And so now, it's pretty interesting, the Nordic industry as a whole compared to Alpine is certainly much smaller in the United States, but if you look at some of the growth charts, starting to grow, thankful to our friends from the U.S. ski team winning gold medals and being great ambassadors and role models, that it's also an active outdoor lifestyle, fitness, health and wellness is starting to come in vogue a little bit more, hopefully, than not. And so, interestingly, when we look at something like the American Birkebeiner, we have, there's been about 280,000 people that have finished the race since 1973 when it started. And it's part of what's called the World Open. It's a league of races around the whole world. And interestingly enough, in the United States, we actively communicate with about 35 or 40,000 people in our database. They travel to northern Wisconsin. Some of them call it the cold turkey Birkie when they show up because they've skied once all year. They came from California, Florida, Hawaii, wherever it may be, and they decide they're just going to come ski because it's a thing to do. Well, that passion is unbelievable, that they're going to pay, all this money to come ski once, to be a part of it. But really, why are they doing it? It comes back to this. Maybe there's 100 of them or 200 of them that are coming to race, but really they're coming because they're passionate about the community that they're a part of when they're there. They get to connect with it once a year, 5 times a year, whatever it is. So as an organization, and it's interesting listening to the conflict, because where this story goes is very similar. We feel like the place that needs action is not with how us as an organization can say, hey, we're here to lobby as an organization. It's getting that grassroots activism. In 2017, we had a great run. The event's been wonderful. Some of you that have skied it in 2014, there was so much snow, we barely didn't do it. We almost had to cancel the race. There was too much snow. All the tents were collapsing, 18, 11 below zero. Well, fast forward to 2017, the race is canceled. There's no snow. We look like we're going to pull it off. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. But in spite of that, that year 13,000 skiers were going to do it. We had nearly 10,000 still show up. And they didn't come to ski the race. They came because they wanted to be a part of the community. They wanted to see their friends. They could go ski on 1 kilometer, but they couldn't really ski because there was so many people. And we ran out of brats, and the beer was gone. Well, it wasn't gone because we're in Wisconsin. We got plenty of beer there. But the point is that they were so passionate about the event and the culture. So then we started having that conversation. Paul Thompson and a few others that have been talking with us said, you know what? They're so passionate about this. Then they started inquiring with us, what can we do? We feel like, boy, we really love this event in this case, but this is bigger than us. And what is it that we can do to help make a change? And all of a sudden, it sort of flipped in as an organization and said, boy, our role in this is maybe not necessarily coming to Washington to lobby, and we can be a part of that, but really what it is connecting those 35,000 people that are passionate about winter, not 4 million, but close, to get out and do something, because not any one of us have a really unique story like, man, that's a story that's going to make the change. But collectively, as we all make and have that story, that's the power of change, as we all come together and make those efforts. So it's our goal, and we've made little steps. Imagine 13,000 plastic bags going into the landfill after you have your event. So we decided to make everybody buy a permanent backpack that you're going to have to reuse year and year after year. And I said, wow, that's amazing. I said, that's 13,000 plastic bags. That's just the tip of the iceberg. But think of all 35,000 if you went out and wrote your congressman or did something, how powerful that would be. So the conversation from the little northern Wisconsin town, and it's interesting that we are the second poorest county by median income in Wisconsin, but yet the economic impact of the Birkebeiner is over $20 million because there's so many second home buyers. We're not far from the Twin Cities. So the goal being, from our standpoint, is taking that activism, that passion that you have for the ski industry and being outside in the serenity of on a trail or wherever it may be, to ensuring that it continues to happen. So that's our goal.
Thanks so much. I'm super honored to be here. It's awesome. I train full-time. I don't speak in front of a microphone full-time, so I hope you guys don't mind if I read off some of my notes here. I'm here to talk about how climate change has affected me as a ski racer, but perhaps more importantly, how it's affected my lifestyle as someone who spends every minute I possibly can outside in the mountains and on the trails and rivers and the places I love. This photo that you see was taken 3 years ago on an adventure I undertook with 2 of my best friends, in which we crust-skied 30 miles on our cross-country skis in the backcountry around the Maroon Bells outside of my home of Aspen, Colorado. You can see my little silhouetted speck way up high there right on the ridge. To me, this photo encapsulates why exactly I love being outside so much and why I care about protecting our environment and fighting for a healthier planet that I can pass on to my children and my grandchildren. Nothing is more important than the feeling I get when I surround myself with rugged peaks and wild landscapes. And a vital part of that feeling is knowing that we are all living on this fragile planet and that we have an obligation to protect our lands, our oceans, and the natural moods of our seasons and weather. Since I started ski racing full-time 9 years ago, I have seen a steady unraveling of our winter season. I spent about 5 months every winter racing in Europe, and I'd be lying if I said that every year on the World Cup has been worse and worse in terms of snowfall and conditions. We've experienced some decent winters in Europe, but we've also seen some absolutely dismal winters. I can assure you that, in my opinion, they have certainly been trending downward in terms of snowfall and conditions. But more significant than that, everything has just been getting more and more bizarre. It's become the norm to be racing on man-made or farmed snow well into January, at which point it's not uncommon to get 4 feet of snow in one storm. Soon after, it'll rain about 5 inches and be 50 degrees and all the snow disappears. And that's just within 1 or 2 weeks in January. In the past few years, race venues have had to start relying on man-made farm snow again in February because the natural snow has already melted out. My teammates and fellow competitors on the World Cup have recognized that not only do these bizarre conditions hinder us and make us wonder if we'll still have any natural snow to ski on in a decade, but also that it's not only us as athletes that it's affecting. Many of the places we travel to rely heavily on attracting spectators and fans who come to watch our races. These same places also rely on a steady stream of tourism throughout the winter to keep their local economies healthy. With less snow and an all-around deterioration of our natural seasons and weather patterns, these small communities are not getting the business they need to survive. Just in our sport alone, there has been a 6 to 8% decrease in the last 5 years in World Cup spectator attendance and television viewership worldwide. And it's widely believed that our disappearing winters is a main driver of this. Ski racing is becoming less relevant because people are losing touch with healthy winter seasons. So what are we doing about this? First and foremost, we're rallying hundreds of other ski racers from around the world to get behind this movement that we believe will be a huge driver in saving our sport and our winters. We're encouraging other athletes to pressure their governing bodies, as well as the International Ski Federation, to adopt and uphold environmental sustainability initiatives, especially when events like World Cup races and World Championships are held. We're encouraging athletes to use their high-profile statures in their countries to push for significant political actions that address climate change and the ways we can confront it. Lastly, we as U.S. ski racers are standing up to make our voices heard. We're telling our fans and supporters that we will not take a backseat on these issues, and we will not take a benign approach that many professional athletes resort to when asked about hot topics such as climate change. I have an immense amount of respect and admiration for everyone involved in this movement, for everyone in this room, for all those out there that recognize this as one of the most important issues of our lifetime. And I can assure you that we as U.S. ski racers and many of our international ski racer friends will continue to make our voices heard and push for meaningful change that will ensure our sport and our winners continue to thrive well into the future. Thanks.
Thank you all for sharing. That was really great. What I wanted to get at this panel was how effective storytelling can be in broadening relationships, not just with your member of Congress, but also with your community in the ski industry. So we probably have a lot of skiers, cross-country, downhill skiers here, but we also have people who are outdoors hunting and fishing and snowmobilers, and I believe that we have an opportunity for all of us to come together collectively to raise our voice. And so I wanted to just ask the panel, and you guys can just jump in as you feel comfortable, but from your perspective in the industry, what do you see as the most effective thing you can do to leverage your influence, and how can we as an industry broaden our influence together?
I'll start. I think it's exactly, to me, it's about coming together. The point being, it doesn't matter if you're a skier, you're a hunter, you're a fisherman, you like to snowmobile. Any of those outdoor experiences can bring out passion in you. And then when you bring out the passion, speaking about those experiences, I think that then becomes powerful. And again, it's not that us as organizations, I think, are actually the most important. I think it's each of the individuals. Our role as the organizations are to bring those people to action. Say, hey, look, there's 35,000 of us, there's 4 million of us, whatever it might be. If we all come to action, we're going to make a difference. Not so much that the American Birkebeiner Foundation or the U.S. ski team or whatever they may be, yes, they can influence, but I think ultimately getting that activism out of our constituents ultimately is where we need to go.
Thank you.
Quickly add to that, I completely agree with Ben, and I think that there is a big opportunity in the industry as a whole to collaborate more with one another on how to bring that out. It can't be a blanket effort. I get that that's not going to work because every business wants to keep their personality, but I do think that there's phenomenal opportunity to collaborate. I came from the outdoor apparel industry, and there were a lot of structured organizations there, Outdoor Industry Sustainability Working Group, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, and they had all figured out that, you know what, they were trying to affect change in their factories and their supply chain, and if we're not going to be able to do that if it's just one of us, and we all need to work together to actually be able to do that. And I think that we as a ski industry have opportunity to work with the outdoor and run and bike and hunt and fish and ski all together on this. And I think that's a pretty, not a blank slate, but there's a whole lot of work that we can do that I think once we start that ball rolling, it's going to roll really fast.
And I would just hop in. For me, I really notice, I get the behind the scenes with big companies and corporations like my sponsors. And for you guys, like the outdoor industry, I believe is like a $6 billion industry. And so we actually can have a lot of political sway. So speaking up, supporting brands you like, or letting the brands that you really love and care about, you know, let them know that climate change is a really big issue and that you'd like to see them take action on it or take a political stance to get some of those corporate levers moving. Using your dollar that way or your voice towards the corporations, I think that can go a long way as well.
I'm just going to reinforce how important that is. As someone who sits as a sustainability person in a company that's trying to drive change, the more that we can hear that, the easier it is to actually affect that change. Please.
I'd add that as cliched as it is to say this, I think a lot of it comes down to kids. I know I'm a POW athlete. I know Angel's a POW athlete. You know, a lot of what POW is centered around is getting these kids involved and getting them fired up and passionate about being outside and recognizing the opportunities that they have out in the mountains or on the trails or wherever they are in their communities. And I think it's really hard to convince kids to, you know, write to their senators and their Congress members and, you know, do all these like kind of boring things, for kids anyway, unless they really see the value in protecting something that they absolutely truly love. So, you know, I spend a lot of time, I ski for a club team out of Vermont, and the club team is associated with the high school there, and we have a full-time junior program, so I get to spend a lot of time with kids from 8 to 18 years old, and just being able to get them outside and just have them realize how important these places are that we're protecting is you know, to me, one of the most fundamental first steps that we can take. And then once they realize the value of that, then you know, you start introducing how they can protect those things through policy changes in their government, their local and national governments, et cetera.
And I think I just want to jump in on there. Right now, whether it be the tragedies that have happened, there is a youth movement of youth being powerful and coming together. And I think it's really important that we have them involved. It's fun that some of my lobby team has a 10-year-old. She's here to be involved and understands part of it. And I think getting them involved as early as we can, they understand it. They're not just kids. They really are powerful. And I think so important to get them involved early on.
Wonderful. Thanks. We're going to open it up here to questions from the audience. So we have somebody over there with a mic, and I see some hands going up already. I think, do you have the mic?
I have the mic, yes.
I'm pointing in the dark, so I think it's over there.
So I have two parts of the question. They're both about conversations. The first part is in terms of what you want to hear from consumers, how? What channels are the most effective for influencing change within your company? And the second part is I was really struck by, we've had a lot of speakers, really passionate, and I haven't heard that love for planet Earth, like I just heard here, that I can really feel your connection to our Earth. And, I was thinking, ski resorts are kind of community hubs. You have all these people coming, and do you ever have, I know you talked a lot about action and what you're doing around energy efficiency and things, but do you ever take advantage of that for community conversations, both to celebrate Earth, to mourn the loss of what we're losing, and then have action arise out of that collectively?
I have to admit that it was a little echoey on the last part about the community conversations. So I'm going to answer the first question, and then it's possible one of these people heard this up here, because I know POW does some good community conversations, and then I'll be able to chime in. So just super briefly on the getting the message to the companies, I would say there are two things. There's a messenger and a message, right? And oftentimes both of them really matter. I think in this case, it's the message that matters, and that it's coming from, I guess there are two sides of messenger, but it's coming from someone who cares about that business. But any line of communication, it doesn't matter if it's Facebook, if it's Twitter, if it's email, if it's writing a letter to the president, any line of communication is going to be helpful because people in positions like mine are building that as ammo to be able to build a bigger program, and anyone in the company should know that that is, that's kind of where it needs to go. So that's what I would say. My point on that is don't overthink that piece. Just get the message in there, whatever is most comfortable for you. And then the community piece, I don't know, did you guys hear?
Yeah, I think the question was, are any of us involved in organizing the community, especially at the ski resorts, around the sense of loss that we're experiencing or talking about climate? And I would say that I'm not. That is something I would like to explore more. I think it's a conversation for all of us. How do we talk about climate in our everyday lives? Do we host dinner parties? Do we host open bars? How do we make climate cool? I don't know if you guys have seen that around, but how do we make it cool? How do we make it fun? How do we make dinner parties where that's a topic of conversation? And I don't have the answer for that. And I think why maybe you're feeling us speak with such heart or connection to nature is that even though ski areas are crowded, or the ski industry can be in these really crowded places, it's all about that connection to nature, and it's all about experiencing it with the people that we love. So these celebrations of how awesome nature is, and also the mourning of how things are changing, these are already happening there. At least in Salt Lake, there's a lot of talk about how things are changing constantly. So that talk is happening, and it's up to us, especially to be able to inject into these conversations, either make them happen more often or to interject solutions like what CCL is proposing. I don't have the answer, but I know it's happening, and we can offer nuggets.
Oh, we had another question. I just wanted to also, we have people here who have endorsed carbon pricing principles. We've had people who have done videos for supporting carbon fee and dividend. The ski team did, Angel did. These are people that are putting their hearts out there and talking about this issue in a very powerful way. And I think that's the beauty of this community that we have, and that, as I've heard Auden Schindler say from Aspen Ski Corp, a way of life is in jeopardy. A way of life. It's a way of life, and we have the power to create change, and all of you are doing that, and I appreciate that. Next question.
How can I buy 5 copies of the movie Saving Snow that I can give to my Vermont members of Congress and my local ski operators?
Go to Vimeo.
Well, I want DVDs. I want to hand them something so that they have it to pass around their audience. And is that possible?
We wanted to do it with low carbon footprint, so
Well,
if you know a way of transferring to a DVD, go for it.
okay, thank you.
I wanted to thank all of you. I grew up skiing as a kid, wandering around the parking lot in little pink plastic skis. And I still ski, and I love it so much that I've moved to Alaska, and I'm not leaving. You know, there's a lot of talk around the Olympics about the whiteout on climate change coverage. And though I've watched the ending of a certain race 30 times, I would have been probably more thrilled to see, the media covering climate change and the effect that it has on the Olympics and on the ski industry and winter sports and whatnot. What can we do to break that silence on the part of these sports channels that are covering winter sports?
I guess I'll say something brief about that. Not to sound pessimistic, but I don't think it's, the IOC, they're fairly stubborn and set in their ways and a little bit hard to understand and deal with sometimes. But one optimistic thing I'll say is that governing bodies like FIS, the International Ski Federation, they're taking huge steps to create better eco-friendly initiatives with putting on races and building new race venues. When they host a World Cup or World Championships, basically the venue has to follow a pretty strict set of guidelines to ensure that they're creating an event that is very low impact. And so I think FIS is in the ski racing world, FIS is the biggest entity, and I think that the IOC at some point has to pay attention to what FIS is doing and all these other big governing bodies from other sports in that measure. So, as a World Cup athlete, I think the best thing that we can be doing, like I said earlier, is to just keep pressuring FIS to be moving in that direction, and hopefully that has kind of some sway eventually on what the IOC is doing.
And I think part of it too is some of the media groups are owned by big dollars, and at the end of the day, it comes down to the folks that are driving the bus, so to speak. That the media groups that are covering these, whether it be NBC, name any one of them, until we're able to, I think, unite ourselves more and more and really start to be recognized, it's pretty easy to cover up, so to speak, and so I think it really does have to start from a grassroots. Think of where this was 5 years ago to now. We just have to continue on that to make sure that we can be heard, so that eventually it will get covered, and I don't know if it's really a secret. Unfortunately, it just is going to take some hard work at this point.
I don't think we need the microphone either. I bet we could pick people and they could yell.
Great.
How about the person asking in the back there?
Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, it was interesting this morning in the opening remarks talking about one of our greatest threats to health was climate change. So hopefully that message continues. You know, we can talk about obesity and all sorts of things, but if it truly is actually our changing climate that is one of our greatest health risks, suddenly one would hope that that gets to the forefront.
Yeah, and just elaborating on that, like as a public figure or anytime I'm interviewed, I try to, or I'm in an appropriate place, I try to talk about what I'm seeing in my living. I try and talk about CCL. I don't always do it. Sometimes it's because I'm nervous in front of cameras and stuff and I'm only human. But sometimes when I post on social media about climate change, you get haters, you know? And so I would just encourage you guys, if you see somebody speaking up on climate change, to like go out of your way and give them a round of applause or whatever, a positive message, because that goes a long way, because they're getting a lot of hate for that too, and it definitely makes us not want to speak up.
Laura, did you want to say something? Okay, it looks like we have time for one more question.
I have a question, but something that we've done to build community with the help of Popp and the foundation and Dan Hersher, we're all CCL people. We do outreach. They have an expo every year, so we have a table. Last year, 2 years ago, when it was canceled, we got 512 letters signed. Last year, Dan Hersher from the Birchwood chapter, he presented to the foundation. They didn't endorse carbon fee and dividend, but they said, well, we've got to endorse carbon action. So now their executive director is here. We showed the movie in Minnesota 25 times, and how many of you hosted the film? Look at the hands. 155 times, Saving Snow. So this year, Saving Snow, season 2. Same movie, but new people. So you've got to bring that in, like the gentleman over here. He wants 5 copies, go for it. I mean, we need to be doing the work out in the community and get people talking about it and bring the CCL action. And that can be all kinds of things, from, you know, helping out with your ski resort, teaching kids to carpool, using low carbon waxes, lifestyle changes, but the big one is citizenship. So thank you all for leading that voice from your public stand. Nope.
All right.
Tomorrow I'll be meeting with my member of Congress, and he's a hockey fanatic from Minnesota. And do you know any specific examples that could resonate out of the hockey industry with my representative? And we'll be mentioning Aaron Paulson's recent joining in the Climate Solutions Caucus.
I try and ski on snow, not ice. I don't know a lot about hockey, sorry.
I'll say real quick, I'm kind of a hockey fan, and I noticed in the Stanley Cup Finals last week, there was a little bit more buzz coming out each day about how the Las Vegas Golden Knights, the ice in their stadium was becoming more and more unskateable, or is just becoming softer because it was so hot in Las Vegas. And so I don't think, I think we think of like climate change is only affecting the skiers and the snowboarders and the people that are outside, but I think that there is, it translates across all sports that need colder temperatures. So, I think at any level, your Congress member has to pay attention to you, and if you can make, just more relevant, and I think that'll go a long ways.
And you've probably already done this research, but I do know that, NBA, NHL, baseball, soccer, they all have made some serious strides as organizations toward mitigating their impact. So you could probably find a proof point from the NHL about, okay, we're taking this seriously. There's probably some arena out there that's a token arena, that's a LEED certified arena or something. So there may be a tie there.
Okay, well, this has been a real pleasure to have all of you in the panel discussion, and I'm really appreciative for all of you making the effort to be here and speaking up and speaking out. It's such an important thing. I'll do one pitch here. I run the Ski and Outdoor Industry Action Team for Utah. For CCL. Sorry. got caught up there. I'd love to have you join. We're really focused on working on getting endorsements, and we'd love to have more help in doing that and reaching out to our community and reaching across the aisle to our other enthusiasts in the outdoor industries and all of them. And so please join the action team, and let's continue to build political will. And please give a hand to the panel who made a huge effort to be here. Cool.